Before we get started, just a quick heads up. This explainer is for educational and informational purposes only. It isn't financial or investment advice. All investments do carry risk, so we strongly encourage you to do your own research and talk to a qualified financial professional before making any decisions.
Okay, let's dive right in. You hear about Bitcoin constantly, right? But how does it really work under the hood? For the next few minutes, let's just forget about the price. We're going to peel back the layers and look at the core technology, the stuff that makes it possible to send value to anyone, anywhere in the world without needing a bank. We're talking transactions, mining, and the incredible security that holds the whole thing together.
So before we get into the how, we really have to understand the why. Bitcoin didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was born back in 2008, right in the middle of a massive global financial crisis. And that crisis showed everyone just how fragile a system can be when it relies completely on trusted institutions like banks. So the big question became, could we build something different? A financial system that doesn't force us to trust anyone? I mean, think about it. This is the fundamental challenge. If I want to send you some digital cash, say from here in New York all the way to Tokyo, how do we do that directly, just between us, without a bank or a PayPal or some other middleman sitting there to approve it and move the money? How would that even work? And, this is the even tougher nut to crack. It's what people in the space call the double spending problem. With a physical dollar bill, it's easy, right? I give it to you, it's yours, and I can't give that same bill to someone else. But digital stuff, that's just information, and you can copy a file 1,000,000 times. So how in the world do you create a digital coin that can't just be copied and pasted and spent over and over again? This was the puzzle that stumped people for decades. So, Bitcoin's first brilliant piece of the puzzle is a really clever use of cryptography to solve the ownership problem. It gives you a way to prove you own your digital money and to control it directly with no one's permission. And it all boils down to a very special pair of digital keys. The easiest way to think about this is like your bank account. Your public key is basically your account number. It's totally safe to share it with anyone who wants to send you Bitcoin. But your private key, that's like your password or your secret PIN code. It's the one thing that gives you the power to actually spend your funds. You guard that key with your life, and you never, ever share it. So how do you actually use that secret private key? Well, you use it to create what's called a digital signature. Whenever you want to send some Bitcoin, your wallet software uses your private key to sign that specific transaction. This creates this unique, unbreakable mathematical proof, kind of like a digital fingerprint. And this signature proves two absolutely crucial things. One, that you, the owner of that private key, authorize the payment. And two, that the transaction details haven't been changed one bit.
And this brings us to what is probably the single most important mantra in the entire crypto world. Your keys, your coins. Not your keys, not your coins. It's simple. If you are the one who holds and controls your private keys, you truly own your Bitcoin. If somebody else, like an exchange, is holding those keys for you, then at the end of the day, they are the ones in control.
Okay, so we've got a way to prove we own our coins and a way to authorize spending them. But how does everyone on the network keep track of all this? Who owns what? The answer was a pretty radical idea. What if we just made the ledger completely public? A shared book of every single transaction ever made. Every transaction looks kind of like a simple entry in an accounting book. On one side, you have the inputs, that's the Bitcoin being spent. And on the other side, you have the outputs, that's where the Bitcoin is going. And if there's a little bit left over between the inputs and the outputs, that becomes the transaction fee, which is a really important incentive that we're going to talk more about in just a minute. And where do all these transactions end up? Well, they live on the blockchain. You can think of it as a global digital record book, but it's a special kind of book. Each page, or block, is just a list of recent verified transactions. And here's the magic. Each new block is cryptographically linked to the one right before it, creating this unbreakable chain that goes all the way back to the very first Bitcoin transaction. This chain is the one single source of truth for the entire network.
Now, this all sounds fantastic, right? But it brings up a huge question. Who gets to add new blocks to this chain? I mean, if just anyone could add whatever they wanted, they could cheat the system. This is where the genius of Bitcoin's security model comes in. It's a process called mining.
Now, mining has nothing to do with digging in the ground. It's the process that validates transactions and secures the entire network. Miners are basically the decentralized accountants of Bitcoin. They gather up all the pending transactions, and then they compete in a massive global lottery to be the one who gets to add the next block to the chain. And the competition they're in is called proof of work. What it means is that miners are using incredibly powerful, specialized computers to try and solve a very, very difficult math problem. Finding the answer takes a huge amount of trial and error, which costs real-world energy. But here's the clever part. Once a miner finds the solution, it's super easy for everyone else on the network to check it and see that it's correct. It's this work that makes the blockchain so secure and so hard to attack. So you might be asking, why would anyone spend all this money on computers and electricity to do this? Well, the answer is incentives. The miner who wins the race and solves the puzzle gets paid in two ways. First, they get the block reward, which is a certain amount of brand new Bitcoin created out of thin air. And second, they get to collect all those little transaction fees from every transaction they included in their block. This economic reward is the engine that powers the security of the entire network. So we've looked at all the individual parts, right? We've got keys, transactions, the blockchain, mining. So now let's put it all together and see what it looks like. We're going to follow one single payment from start to finish, so you can see how all these pieces work together perfectly. All right, so let's say Alice wants to send some Bitcoin to her friend, Bob. First, her wallet creates the transaction. Then it uses her private key to create that unique digital signature. That signed transaction gets broadcast out to the whole network. Then computers on the network, which we call nodes, they check that signature to make sure it's legit, and they also check that Alice actually has the Bitcoin to send. A miner will then grab her valid transaction, bundle it into a block they're working on, and start trying to solve that puzzle. Once a miner finds the solution, that block gets added to the blockchain, the transaction is officially confirmed, and voila, Bob sees the Bitcoin pop up in his wallet. So when you zoom out from just that one transaction from Alice to Bob, you start to see what this process actually creates. It's something totally new. A secure global network that functions without any single person or company in charge. This is the real power of decentralization. And the backbone of this decentralized system is the huge network of nodes. A node is really just any computer out there that's running the Bitcoin software. There are thousands of them all over the world, and every single one of them keeps its own full copy of the entire blockchain. You can think of them as the independent referees of the game, all enforcing the same rulebook.
So why is this such a big deal? Well, for one, with thousands of copies of the ledger spread out everywhere, there's no single server to hack, no central point of failure to shut down. It also means that no single person or government can block a valid transaction they don't like. It's censorship resistant. And because that whole ledger is public, anyone, anywhere can look at it and verify the entire history for themselves. It's a system built on transparency.
So when you boil it all down, Bitcoin's incredible security really stands on three pillars. First, the way the blockchain is chained together makes it basically immutable. To change the past, you'd have to rewrite all of history that came after it. Second, you have distributed consensus, meaning thousands of independent nodes would have to agree with your fake history. And finally, proof of work just makes it astronomically expensive and difficult to even try to overpower the rest of the network. It's just not practical.
So here's the key takeaway. Bitcoin wasn't really one single groundbreaking invention. It was the elegant combination of three existing ideas. It took public key cryptography for ownership, a decentralized peer-to-peer network for communication, and it added a brilliant layer of economic incentives to get everyone to play by the rules and keep the system secure.
All right, before we wrap up, let's just bust a few common myths really quickly. First, Bitcoin and blockchain are not the same thing. Bitcoin is just the first major application built on a blockchain. Second, miners don't just create coins whenever they want. They earn them by doing the hard work that secures the network, and they follow very strict rules. Third, transactions aren't totally anonymous. They're pseudonymous, meaning they're tied to public addresses. And finally, and most importantly, there's no CEO of Bitcoin. No one is in charge. The network is controlled by the consensus of all its participants.
So we've just gone through the entire machine from top to bottom. It's a system designed from the ground up to move value securely without needing to trust a middleman. So the real question to leave you with is this. Now that we have this foundation, what does it make possible? What new kinds of applications and financial tools can be built on top of a global, programmable, and trustless system? That really is the next frontier.